Now, you did not come here for some fancy schmancy intro, you came here because you clicked on a title that I very nicely curated on how to build apps faster. And boy, are you in the right place. Let me set up my talking setup. Now, while mobile apps are a lot of fun to build, they also do take quite some time to produce. And that is why a lot of the traditional agencies take months, years for multiple developers to build one app. And now, let me tell you, you never need more than 6 months to build an application, no matter how large, no matter how big, no matter how complex, and no matter how big of a team that you have. I should preface this by saying that obviously this will depend on the size of your app. If you have a big project, it will take longer. If you have a smaller project, you can do it very quickly. But an MVP of any size should never take longer than 6 months for any team. Now, how do I know this? Not to toot my own horn, but I have built a couple of apps. I have built Venture Pals, Arbster, Wonder Sagas, a couple of apps that I never released, and I'm now working on Parenter that I did build in quite a short period of time. Now, I have done and I know this, and I'm now sharing my experience with you. So first of all, you need some type of structure in regards to how you're building your app. I'm gonna show you the structure I use, so you can use any structure really. You can use Airtable, Jira, Notion, and then paper if you're old school. But I'm gonna show you the setup that I have, so let's hop over in the computer and I'll demo my Notion page that's also linked for free down below if you wanna use that template. Okay, so here is pretty much a live view of the template that I have and what I use to manage my projects. Sometimes I use Airtable when I share with others, sometimes I use Notion, but it's the exact same structure. So the first of all, what we're gonna see is this roadmap. So inside of the roadmap, we can have different types of tasks. So a task is essentially something that you have to do for your particular project. So maybe one task is to get UI design ready, and that means we're going to add that as a task. Then we can assign this to, for example, a task. We can add it to sprint 21. We can set that this is a high priority, and the timeline is going to be, for example, we want this to be done by the 22nd of October. So we'll add that too. If we have product managers, we can add that. Now I'm the only one in this team, so we're going to put Herman Palmgren. Engineers, also I'm the only one in this team. And as you can see, as we build this out, we're able to see how we get this status here. And then we can add some comments, for instance. We can say, this is a task to highlight that we Figma ready. So if you're working with the UX designer, for example, this is just to say this is one of the tasks for the first sprint, or the sprint 21 in this case, to get a UI design for this feature ready. Then we can go over to sprints and we can see the different things here. So as you start building these up, we can duplicate this, for instance. So you're going to be able to see, you're going to be able to add different tasks. So maybe one task is to, for instance, create a floating action button on the home page of the app. We can add that as a separate task. And then as you plan, you can spread this out over different sprints by moving it along here. We can also go over to just all of the general tasks where we can, for example, filter by person if you're more than one, or we can filter by priority and only get the top priority ones, for instance, by selecting filter. Now we only have top priority ones, but I think you get the gist of the idea. We can go to tasks by engineers. Maybe we have someone who's Jen Jackson, who I'm working with. So I can move some tasks over to Jen and assign it to him, her instead. And we can also check if we have different project managers, we can also assign tasks to them. So this is something that's a very nice overview of all of your tasks. And then as you move along with these tasks, you go from status to in progress. And then, for example, once you've completed the task, and then you move on to the next task and you go to in progress, and then you see you get this nice table here where you have different statuses. So that's a pretty good way to manage this, I think, and this is the way I manage all of my tasks these days. You can do it by sprint, you can do it by status, you can do it by the person. And now this is a template that I have down below, and I'm leaving this quite empty like this with this example that you're gonna be able to download. So you open this in the link that I have down below, and you just copy this into your own Notion page, and then you're ready to start working. There are some brief descriptions as well, and you can modify the sprints as well. So for example, we can mark this sprint as done, and then that sprint will disappear from the view, etc, etc. So there's quite some features, and I think it's quite easy to overcomplicate this by adding too many buckets, too many features. But I like to keep it quite simple, where I'm working mainly from the tasks by status, and then I tag them with a different sprint, and then I filter that. Then if I'm working with someone else, it's nice to have the feature where I can assign the particular task to someone else and then see their status in real time. And then we know that once we've completed all of the tasks in sprint 21, for instance, i.e. they're marked as completed, then we can archive them and move on to pushing this release version of the app. So definitely check this out. It's a great way, it's a great resource, and if you want to build an app quickly, it's all about being structured and having some type of structure in the life. Now, after you've ensured that you have a plan and a structure to structure your development over time, you can move on to the next phase, which is a UI, UX design, or at the very least, a wireframe. This is something for you to work after. It's a collection of the colors that you're going to use. It's a collection of how the user is actually going to navigate through your app. And based on this, you're going to go ahead and develop the screens and the functions that you need for the application. If you don't have this, it's very easy to freeball. And when you freeball an application, it leads to dependencies which are difficult to overcome in the future because your lines of code crisscross everywhere, directing you to one page to another page, and then you have found out that you're just all over the place. So a wireframe or UX design will allow you to, in a very coherent manner, lay all of the screens and processes of your app out on one page and then code accordingly in a structured manner. It'll also ensure that your app looks good so that you're using the same type of buttons, the same type of text, and the same type of look throughout your app to not confuse the user and also make them feel as if they're in the same place all of the time. So for example, functions such as this type of button should lead to the same type of things, and this type of text should be used for the same type of content inside of the app, etc. You get where I'm going with this. A familiarity so that once they've learned how to use the app, all of the new functions that you add in the future, as well as all the other functions inside of the app that they have not explored yet, are easy to find. Next. So there are a lot of people who are still coding in an old-fashioned way. And now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this. We need people who know how to code perfectly and write sufficient advanced code just from the complexity of their brain. But if you want to do stuff fast and if you want to do stuff good, this is not the best approach. So there are plenty of modern tools such as ChatGPT, such as GitHub Copilot, such as other AI tools that can help you to write code. And my favorite tends to be ChatGPT. And my method, I'm going to show you this quickly on the computer, is that I ask ChatGPT to build a Flutter widget for me. And I don't really ask it to put any styling into it. I just give it some general guidance. And then I myself personally go through all of this and add the styling and the functions, etc. that I want to. This speeds stuff up a lot because I don't need to lay out things like I want a text field here, I want a text field there, but it does that all for me. And then I'm able to go through this and correct it with the correct colors, with the correct format, structure, etc. And even better, if you have standard colors or standard buttons, which you should do, you can give ChatGPT all of this and it will be able to add these into your code. And then you can just go ahead and add a function there or add something there, etc., etc. But if you collaborate with AI like this, because AI is not yet ready to write code itself, or at least very good UI code, then you're going to be able to speed up your work so much by collaborating as opposed to not collaborating with AI. Let me show you an example of what I mean. Now, one of my favorite features for building apps is to use smart tools such as ChatGPT. And one of my favorite ways to use ChatGPT is to tell ChatGPT to generate code that I can base my own code off. So this is an event page that I'm building and it looks completely different from what it's actually going to look like. This is quite an ugly version, but what I have here is a way to work through all of this. So then I can go through all of this. For example, text form field, maybe I want to change the decoration. I can change this to Halloween, etc. I can make the border slightly less rounded and I can make the border purple, for instance. And if we do that, we can see we go through some changes like so. And what this does, and this ChatGPT command does, is it generates boilerplate code that I myself can work through. So as you can see, this is quite boilerplate and it looks ugly, but I don't have to write out all of these text fields, etc. I don't have to go through the whole column and write through, okay, here we have a text field in this side of this column, and then moving down we have a sized box, then we have a text with some event details, etc., etc. So it's quite a nice way to generate boilerplate of all of the stuff you need, and then you manually can go through and change this. Because I've found that ChatGPT isn't really that good for writing complete code, but it's good at taking some instructions and generating boilerplate for it. Now, we can also ask it to redo certain parts. So for instance, if we go back here and we take can you rewrite this to be purple when active and gray when inactive. Also make it less rounded. So if we were lazy and if we didn't know how to code particularly well, then it's actually easy to ask ChatGPT to do these things as well. You paste a small snippet of code that maybe you don't want to know how to or don't want to change yourself, and then you can, based on this, copy that, go in here, paste it, add a comma there, rerun it, and then we can see that it's slightly different. And if we think that looks nice, what we can then do is we can go back to ChatGPT, we can paste the whole widget and say, nice, now rewrite, look like this, or text fields we should say, like so. And ChatGPT will actually rewrite the whole widget and take all of the text fields and make them look like the exact same. So this also saves quite a bit of time, because if you have a particular style that you're following or a UI design that you're following, you can take one text field, for instance, in this case, or one text or one background or whatever it is, change it in one place and say to ChatGPT, this is what I want all of these text fields to look like inside of this particular widget. And ChatGPT will actually go ahead and it will write out a full widget for you in working code. So I've found that teaming up with AI in this method is much better than relying on AI, because AI is not really, or from my experience, not really good enough to write UI or good looking UI just yet. And it's also not coherent enough to put together a lot of different providers and models, etc. inside of an app. But I think that it works perfectly for speeding up coding by taking some of these details and then working through it and providing you with boilerplate that you can then manually go and add to later on. So that's a big tip too. Definitely check out ChatGPT for coding. I know GitHub Copilot works in a similar way. I'm sure Google Gemini also works in a similar way. I'm using ChatGPT 4.0 in this, but you can use anything really. And that's the way I use AI to speed up how I build apps. And now on to the next feature. Now, next up is to build a scalable structure, but don't get too hung up on it. So you want to build an app that has a structure that can scale to hundreds or a couple of thousands of users, and do that in an efficient and scalable, affordable manner. So you want to use things such as providers, you want to use things such as models, and you want to use state providers such as Riverpod or State if you're using Flutter, or whatever those React Native people use for state management. Then you want to build structure and an architecture inside of your app that can scale according to this. So for example, say you have a user model. If you want to add fields or if you want to add data to a user, you modify the user model and the rest of the app will follow. You get the idea. Now, but don't get too hung up on this. The first thing that you should do is to make sure that you have the structure and something that's scalable, but you're not going to start off with millions of users for your app. And odds are, if you scale your app to millions of users or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, you are going to have the budget to allocate resources in the future for people or developers or bureaus, agencies to help you and build this scalable structure into your app if it's not scalable to begin with. But don't spend too much time on this, because then you're not going to be able to validate the idea quick enough, and maybe you're spending a lot of time building scalable structure for an app that there's no need for and there's never going to be a market for, and therefore it's much better to take the time, build an MVP that you can then test that is scalable in the future if needed, but not already, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not sure who said it, but someone said it. If you release a first version of an app and you're not slightly embarrassed, you've released too late. So the first version of your app should not be too advanced. Like if you go back and look at some of these apps, Uber, Instagram, Facebook, Airbnb, just have a look at what these beautiful, beautiful mobile apps used to look like when they first came out and compare that to your app. You see, it doesn't need to be super in the beginning. You can always release something. It's gonna have some bugs, it's gonna look a little bit ugly, it's not gonna be perfectly coherent, but make sure to release this, get some testers on the app, get some validated ideas and some validated feedback from people so that you can actually take this into consideration, build it into your app, remove certain aspects of your app, and then take it from there. Don't wait too long to release your app, and don't aim to be perfect. Perfect is the biggest enemy of good enough, and good enough is exactly what you need to build mobile apps quickly enough for you to be able to validate ideas. Those are some of my learnings after building multiple mobile apps over the last 5 years, and now in the last year or so spending quite a significant amount of time building mobile apps, not just with myself, but with other people as well. If there's anything that you think I missed, or if you have any additional thoughts or comments, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you want more advice like this, you can also find it inside of the community that I'm linking down below in the comments. And with that said, feel free to subscribe if you like these types of videos. If there's more stuff you want me to discuss, then let me know, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.